Hey, this is Jay from POV Poetry, where we do projects and then I write poems about them. Today we're going to talk about rope and how to cut it. There is a good way to cut it, there's a better way to cut it, there's a best way to cut it, and there's even a better best way to cut it. So today we're going to learn about how to use it, how to do it, and in the end you're going to see something almost magical. We're getting started with method number 1. Before you do anything, make sure you're being safe. I'm going to put on safety glasses. I am going to be using knives, so I'm going to be careful always to cut away from myself. This method is okay. In a pinch, this works. What I'm going to do is to take my rope and just take my knife. Hopefully my blade is fairly sharp, and I'm going to, in a quick motion, break the rope. Now, that is not going to work very well. You can use it for a while, but it's going to fray, and eventually it's going to fray all the way down, and you're going to have a variation of the okay way is to take your rope and just put an overhand knot in it. There's other knots you can use, but for now, in a pinch, just put the overhand knot in, and it's not going to fray past the overhand knot. That is an okay way. Here's our second method, very similar to the first, which was okay. This one is a little bit better than okay. What we're going to do is take our rope. I'm going to tie an overhand knot at this position on the rope. I'm going to pull it nice and tight. One thing about overhand knots is they are not easy to undo, but if you never want to undo it, which is what we're going to do in this case, it's perfect. The next thing I'm going to do is take and tie another overhand knot right next to that one. So I want to get as close as I possibly can, leave a little tiny bit of gap, and I'm going to give this a tug for the ages, so that it is very, very tight. Now, what I'm going to do, take my knife, and now I'm going to have the cut between these while they are tied. And there's a much better end for your rope. So that's my method number 2. Better than okay, but there's still better methods to go. Our third way, which is better yet again, this is a decent way. You're going to need a heat source for this one. I'm going to cut cleanly as I can. I'm going to hold these in my hand. I'm going to keep the heat source on them. You can do this one as well. We're just heating the rope up. This rope's pretty big. It takes a little bit more heat. Those ends are going to work. You can take this, hit it under a rock, put it on 2 rocks, smash it while it's still flexible. You can lick your fingers, spit in your fingers, and then pinch, especially if you give yourself a little bit of time. This method is decent. It's still not great. It's very difficult to get this rope. You can see right here, I heated it for a long time. It's still pulling off. I'm not a huge fan of this, but it is better than the other methods. It's probably the most used method we're going to cut rope with. This next method is right about on par with the last one. It's just instead of cutting, then heating, I'm going to heat and then cut. This is a version of paracord. You're not going to want to heat it too much. Heat, and then grab your knife and cut. The ends are now fused. It's usable. Not too bad. Here's another better way, in my humble opinion, and it's to take some tape. Now in this case, I'm using painter's tape. I'm going to show you also with electrical tape. Painter's tape, probably not going to work as well, but it's going to work. So we're going to lead along the rope. I say with painter's tape, you're going to want a few extra wrappings. And then we're just going to tear it off. And I'm going to cut in the center of the tape as best I can. I'm going to give it a little fold to help the cut. And there's just masking tape used. That's going to work. It's not going to last forever. So a better way for this method, again, this is better than the other ways in my humble opinion, is to take electrical tape. It's flexible, it wraps great. If you give it a little tension as you're wrapping, it's going to be super clean. I love wrapping electrical tape for some reason. It just is a little bit of a joy. I'm not going to spend the whole afternoon doing it, but for now, it's a nice method. So there's my wrap. And as you can guess, I'm going to take my knife. I'm going to give it a little cut. And that method is better. That's going to last a long time. If you really want to up this one, just add in a little bit of heat. And there you go. Here is the best way, other than the turbo way I'm going to show you next. One of the problems with this way is that it costs some money to get yourself a Weller soldering iron gun, and then you have to buy this rope cutting end. I'm heating it up, a little bit of smoke coming off, coming over here, and Bob is your uncle. Look at that. It cuts right through the rope. Couldn't be happier. And there you go. A nice, clean cut, just like you'd want. Thanks for sticking with me. This is the absolute better than best method because it's one you can do. It probably won't cost you very much at all. You just need a heat source. You can definitely use a fire, but I am going to use a propane torch. So if you have access to one of these, then giddy up. So what I'm looking for now is a knife, and I'm going to take my propane torch. You can see I've got my rope sitting right here. And I'm going to heat up my blade. Keep the heat on that. If it starts to turn a different color, you know you're good, and then come over right away and right through. Eventually it's going to cool down enough, it's not going to melt through, but you got a couple seconds to get your cut, and that cut right there is as good as you're going to get. So that's turbo beast mode. Now, you don't have to just use utility knife. Once it reaches a certain temperature, then beast mode and beast mode. Okay, another thing you can use is a hacksaw blade. I'm going to heat up my hacksaw blade. This thing has been beat upon for years and years and years. You're going to want a plastic handle on that thing. Do not hold a hacksaw blade in your hand and attempt to use it. And there we go. It cuts like butter. Hey, thanks for sticking to the end of this video. Please like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. We'll be back soon with more rope tricks, things you can do with rope and knots, and poetry. Sweet butter crumpets. I'm just going to heat the end.